We are go for launch in T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Destination, the Grace in Space Podcast.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Grace in Space Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Grace Frazier, and I'm super excited to introduce you guys to my guest today. He has had many titles over the years, my personal favorite being Story Architect, which we can definitely get into later. But please welcome Paul Prosner. Paul, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Hey, Grace. Thanks so much for having me. And I'm so happy to be here and just chat about the space ecosystem with you.
Heck yeah.
So let me tell you a little bit about myself. And I know we're going to get into my journey a little bit more, but where I'm at today is, working over at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab and started up a team called Story Lab from nothing, right? We kind of saw a gap, and so when you're starting something new, you really kind of have to connect with the culture, and so we started using terms like I created Story Architect to help us connect because folks thought, oh, these are storytellers; they're going to tell our story. We're like, no, we want to build your story together, right? And then we also kind of positioned it as the first story accelerator for the lab. We discovered that a lot of stories were being told too late, in order to either win new business or in order to sustain that research or that idea. So we were able to get some internal funding, and then after a couple of years, we were able to go above the line into the ops budget, which was like, yay! And we became a thing, as my boys would say. And so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at today, and just really enjoy it. It's I just love being in the flow with the team and extracting that story from these amazing humans who are doing incredible things. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, storytelling is such a huge part because it's one thing, right, for like engineers and scientists to have an understanding of what is going on, but to be able to convey that to people who might not, like their brains might not work that way, right? So being able to
absolutely.
show what it could be is like so cool and impressive.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. It's like, they have lived with the what is, right?
Mhm.
That's what kind of then sparked this what if idea, right?
Right.
And then they're like, well, I want to tell people what could be. And you're right. That's when they kind of struggle. They don't know. They're almost too close to it sometimes
Mhm.
to really just take a step back and say, the impact this is going to have, this is how, one of the things we kick around is, how is this going to change us? What's it going to do? And they tend to not that they don't think about that, but they're so focused on, maybe getting that next stage of funding or getting that first stage of funding.
Right.
And you tend to kind of forget the basics of what they're actually do. So,
For sure. No, totally. So yeah, if it's cool with you, I would like to, we're gonna take it way back, like it's a we're in therapy right now. So uh so like I guess honestly, if we go back to like childhood, have you kind of always been interested in like creative writing or where'd your like passions lie as you started to figure out what you wanted to
yeah.
do?
No, yeah, that's great. So, um, I think I was in 5th grade and, we had, sorry, I went to a Catholic school and, so it was small. And then we had, the Mars candy folks.
Yeah.
They were gonna come in, and the idea was could pick a candy bar or a candy and write a story about it. And, so I wrote it from the perspective of a coconut that was gonna be part of a Mounds bar, right?
That's awesome.
Sounds like a tragedy, but it was really cool, and, it just kinda I don't know, it was easy. I think it was the first time that I kind of felt like, "Wow, this is maybe what I'm meant to do," and then I was homesick about a week or so later, and one of my older brothers came home and, told my mom that I had won, like, a prize for one of the best stories, and, so my mom came in, and shared that with me. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I guess maybe I do have a knack for this. And then when I went to college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was still kind of, my father was this amazing chief scientist at Hughes Aircraft Company, and I had worked there for a couple of summers during college. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll just go and do that.
Yeah.
But then once I got there, I realized that I could help them tell stories. And so I got into business development. We started doing what at the time we didn't really know, but it was like strategic communications. And again, just kind of the Swiss Army knife of being able to help folks, right? And these things just started kind of developing. And then from there, I think it was a little bit of just fate and being in the right place at the right time that kind of guided my journey, you know, um, and just realizing that I really enjoyed kind of the turning when you work with a person or a team or maybe even an institution, executives, and just get to that turning point of they get it. They're just like, oh my gosh,
Like that makes sense.
yeah, we
Yeah.
doing something powerful here, right? And I think that kind of became a little bit of an addiction.
Yeah.
Uh, Kept wanting to have that feeling, and so then I was able to finally get into the space industry back when I was living back east with L3 Space and Nav, and they were doing these amazing um, uh, initial IMUs, right, to help guide
Yeah.
vehicles to bring the propulsion system back from the shuttle, right? That was one of the big things that they did. So once it launched, those little side rockets would come back and they would guide them back to the ocean. And then they also did, gosh, I'm having a little bit of a brain. The star where they would guide you by the stars. What the hell
Oh,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like space GPS, basically.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool, and I really enjoyed doing that. And there was a lot of at the time it was still man rated, not
God.
human rated, right? But it was great. We were doing a little more on the human exploration side as well. And
That's
then
cool.
and then I got transferred back home to California. And then there was an opportunity. I was just hanging out at my current job, still aerospace and defense. LinkedIn was kind of new. So, this was maybe 14 years ago, 15 years ago. And and all of a sudden they popped up this thing for JPL. And I was like, what? You know, they don't need somebody like me at NASA, right? They just hand out
Uh-huh.
the gigs, they just say, hey, Kennedy, you're doing this. And so, but it was true. Excuse me, it was true. So I went and applied, and it was the slowest, most frustrating process ever.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like to talk about that a little bit because I mean, just interviewing with NASA is something a lot of
Yeah.
people don't even get the opportunity to do. So, like, what did that look like? Was it scary? Was it like, oh my gosh, they want to talk to me? Like,
Yeah, so it was crazy, Grace. So I probably so it was right around Christmas, and in aerospace and defense, they usually give you like the last 2 weeks in December off, right?
okay,
So
yeah.
so it was coming up to that break, and so folks usually add a few days before, right? And so it's one of those times where it's kind of dead around, the office, not a lot's going on because everybody across the aerospace industry does that, right? So it's just really like kind of a quiet time. And that's when I saw the thing on LinkedIn. So I just took a few minutes, over lunch, tweaked my resume, blah, 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 sent it in. Um, and then I would say in mid January, somebody left me a voicemail, and it was Ferris Bueller. It was just like, it was like, oh, hello, Paul. We got your resume here. And it was like, we're super excited, but it was in this very slow, like, you're excited, so you're waiting for the next word.
Yeah, you're like, come on.
Come on, come on. And this guy was just going so slow, and he's like, so, we're gonna have you in for an interview, HR will be calling you. And I was like, woohoo, all right. And then probably in the middle of January, I got all set up, went in for the interview right on campus at JPL. and just driving up to the place, you're just like, wow, you know,
Yeah.
it's exciting, but you do get a little anxious because this is like the place for robotic exploration, right? Just the heritage and all the cool stuff they've done and that they're gonna do. Um, but then the interview process wasn't really terrible. It but it was slow, like I was saying. It was
Right.
super slow. And so I went in, had this great day on campus, meeting a half a dozen folks, having some lunch, and then I leave. And then I got one call about 2 weeks later that said, "Oh, hey, the associate director would like to meet with you." So there's the director, oh, I'm sorry, then the deputy director, right? And I'm like, sure, anytime, right? And
Yeah.
back a couple of days later and said, no, no, he's good. He talked to the folks who interviewed you. He's okay. And I said, great. So this is probably end of January. February goes by. I don't hear anything. March goes by. April goes by. May
Oh,
goes
man.
by.
No.
A bird. And I'm kind of sharing with my wife. I'm like, I should just send him an email. She's like, no, no, don't. I'm like, okay, all right, I will. And then finally, same guy. Hello, Paul. He left me a voicemail, and he's like, we're done slogging through all this, these candidates and stuff, and we want to offer you the job. And I'm just like, what? And
And
but that was it. Um, and then I got hired, and then there was an onboarding process, and then I started, and it was great. I mean, it was really, really a lot of fun. Uh,
that's so crazy.
yeah, but it is kind of slow. It's not like it seems like my experiences in the past with industry was everything happened really fast because he
Exactly.
gets you on board. And boy, this was such a long uh, process, but it was well worth the wait in the end.
Oh, definitely. I bet that call felt pretty surreal. Like months later, you're like, who is this?
Yeah, yeah,
Is this the right number? Oh, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, like am I still in the picture? Yeah.
Yeah, you remember me. That's so cool. That is just crazy. So, could you walk me through kind of like your first I mean, because you've been at NASA like 11 years or so?
Yeah, almost 11 years. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So how were those first couple years? I mean, integrating yourself, you're throwing yourself into this environment with like some of the smartest people in the world, right? Like that's insane.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I felt like I snuck under the tent, right? And
Oh.
that, and I didn't have a ticket, and these people are just like amazing humans. And, and you're just walking across campus and you're hearing different languages. People are chatting in different languages, the diversity of people and the thinking. And I was like, man, am I, that did I do the right thing?
Right, yeah.
Taking this job. But what was great was a couple of the folks that I interviewed with, immediately put me to work, and I got immersed pretty quickly, which was
Okay.
nice. And there was a campaign going on for planetary science, right? And so there was like we so what I began to discover is in industry, right? We usually had a product line, and so you'd be working on maybe one proposal at a time.
Mhm.
And here, there was a target or a destination, right? So hey, you know, the AO, the announcement for opportunity, came out from headquarters for the discovery call, which is up to $500 million, and discovery is just our solar system. And so, where are you going to go? What are you going to look at? They give you some ideas of what they'd like to do, like maybe small bodies,
Right.
icy worlds, right? But it's really loose, and that was different for me too. But so we had like 6 proposals being worked at the same time to respond to this call, and then I was asked to kind of work across all of those. And so it was great because I got immersed in the culture, which is a very unique, um, somewhat challenging, intimidating culture in the beginning, uh,
Mhm.
because most of the folks are kinda walking around with their subject matter expert, kinda,
Right. Yep.
um, a shield or. And so I immediately discovered that I need to find ways to sort of break through that to get them to open up a little more about what they're doing and how we can tell this compelling story. And so the other thing that was really fortunate, Grace, was, the first proposal that they kind of handed me and said, okay, this one's been submitted twice. It was Earth Call. So the Earth calls happen a little more frequently, like Discovery is only every 4 years, but Earth
Okay.
calls are about every 18 months. You can submit, and respond to a call for Earth stewardship, right? Looking at our planet.
Okay.
So they gave me a gig and they said, yeah, gosh, it's been through twice. They just can't quite get it over the goal line. So I met with the PI, really nice guy, and we hung out and we started chatting about the story. And I realized this was all about saving lives, not really about the data, right? And the statistics.
Right.
So his angle was we're going to have more data and statistics than we ever had before on PM 2.5.
Sounds like a typical scientist right there. Yep.
You know, uh, and so I was able to kind of nudge him over to more of a story and to really kind of get to the core of what he was trying to do, him and his team. And so as we started reworking the story and going through some internal reviews, we got a lot of emotional responses from our internal reviewers, right? And they're like, "Wow, I'm really rooting for you guys. This is a
Yeah.
cool idea." And and then when we eventually turned it into headquarters, we got the same kind of response. It got selected, yay! And and so with that, it gave me some street cred as to, hey, this guy hasn't even been here 2 years, and he's already brought in a $100 million, award or mission
It's pretty impressive.
that was struggling, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but I needed that, Grace, right? Because again, for that culture, they look at your accomplishments. I mean, it's
Right.
you know, how many papers have you published? How many things and how many folks have cited your paper, right? And so we kind of had to change that mindset and say, that's at best that's part of your brand, but your personal brand is your story and the kind of impact that you've been making with
Right.
with your research and your work. So that that allowed me to just do more and more things that were more on the outside edge of what they were used to doing.
Mhm.
So, what's also cool is NASA opens up a lot of doors. So there were already some connections to Disney and Pixar down the street, right? So we're here, little industry, right? It's the industry. And so we were able to go down there and chat with those folks. We even brought our PIs down there um, to explain their mission concept for the call, but without any PowerPoint, without anything. They had to just stand
Hello.
and tell their story. And so a couple of them reached out to be coached, but not all of them. And then they would get feedback from these, directors, producers, writers from Disney and Pixar, and that was really cool. And so, folks, we got some good feedback on that. Um, and so we were really good at creating the message. And then there was a pushback, right, on science itself. I guess 8-ish years ago, kind of happening again. But so we figured we also need to get the messengers together, right?
Right.
We got to help these guys and gals be good messengers, right? So we developed a course working with the Caltech Theater Director of Theater Arts, and we created a 10-week course called Credible Messenger Workshop, and where you were just helping, you know, uh, very seasoned scientists and technologists and engineers, all the way down to what we called ECHs or early career hires, just to help them find their voice. Again, kind of like the story architect, we weren't going to tell them what it was, but we wanted to take them through a journey of 10 weeks to where they found their voice. They understood that, this is an instrument. So
Right.
would, an instrument before you go on a stage to play some music, you need to warm it up. You need to do that with it, so we just kind of teach them the basics. But it was really being able to have those early wins and then start to nudge the overall culture towards understanding the power of story and narrative thinking. So
That is so cool, and I don't know, I think it's so awesome of you as well, because just from what I know about you and what we've already talked about, it seems that you just kind of had a natural talent for a lot of this, like, you are naturally very creative and a good storyteller, so for you to be like, "Hey, I wanna help other people, and I want everybody to be able to convey stories and do this, and to create that program is so it's awesome, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, it's very cool."
no, thanks, and yeah, and I think it's kind of maybe what we're here to do as humans, right? Is to kind of help each other, support each other.
Yeah.
You see maybe someone struggling in a certain area, and you want to help, and I think that's the way to kind of just share the sort of superpower of story is to help folks. It's not going to happen overnight, but if they can start understanding the basics, we also have a storytelling, some methodologies that we work on. We kind of have a thing called the storytelling circle where we walk them through like 6 basic things that they should be thinking about for each story, and also the types of stories. Sometimes it's a perception management story. So an example of that was we were working. So this mission's gonna launch soon as well. It's called Sunrise, and it's a heliophysics mission. So it's gonna look at our star, the sun, and look for these coronal mass ejections. Right, these amazing things that we don't quite understand, but could really cause a blackout, electronics blackout here, right,
Right.
on the Earth, right. And so this thing was going to be 6 small sats. So they were going to kind of form a catcher's mitt. And so it would just be monitoring our star. And if something happened, it would at least be able to not stop it, but inform us. So again, just like your power strip on your computer, we could shut everything down before the big pulse comes through. But at that time, the perception of small sets was, oh, they can't really do science. They're good for little experiments, maybe a comms relay, but they're not
Right.
for science. So we knew we had this perception management challenge, and so that was one of the ways that we would help teams. And then the other thing is this idea of, and kind of what we just talked about, kind of helping each other is a lot of these stories were stuck, and we needed the teams to understand that they need to understand their shared story. So anybody could go out and tell their story, right?
Yeah.
In the team, kind of be this force multiplier of getting these amazing stories out to the community, out to stakeholders, so this amazing work could continue.
That is so cool. Yeah, I think it's something that we don't have as much in our culture now in the workplace. Like, I know a lot of workplaces are very competitive, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you walk into a company like NASA that has so many gifted people. I think it's really easy to be like, "Nah, I have this skill. This is mine. I have to keep this, like I can't let anybody else do this or what, So uh, it's cool to hear people that are like, "No, I'm not intimidated. I want to share it, and I think everyone should be the best that they can be." And it's something you just don't see as much these
No,
days.
you're spot on, and what we begin to understand was the journey for most researchers or technologists or engineers is what you just described, right? It's inform and defend, and so when we started the Credible Messenger workshop, we did it for JPLers, but then we're actually Caltech employees, so we're a little different than the other centers. Um, and can you still hear me?
I can still hear you,
Yeah,
yeah.
all right. And so we started to help these folks to, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought, Race.
Oh, no.
No,
It's okay.
inform and defend, right? Inform and defend.
Yes.
So so we wanted to take it over to the students at Caltech because again, in their journey, in all those journeys of a scientist, technologist, or engineer, this inform and defend. And so working with Caltech students, we began to understand that, Caltech and other technical institutions make great researchers, right? Top
Mhm.
notch,
Right.
but not so great, well rounded human to where they're prepared for life after Caltech. And so again, my partner over there, Brian Brophy, the director of theater arts, we put our heads together and we really wanted to try to help create a curriculum over there. We're not quite there yet, but we want to get these tools early on, so we're not teaching, old dogs new tricks.
Yeah,
We want
right.
to get in there early because it's just going to help their career. And if it helps their career and helps them make the impact that they believe, that they're passionate about, that they believe can help change us, then we're all better off. So that's kind of the next thing that we're trying to do is if we can create some sort of curriculum at Caltech, create a model, and then hopefully we can just take that model to other institutions and just say, run with it and then teach these young minds, how to connect with their personal story and their passion and to be able to share that authentically with other people.
Yeah, and I love that too. I think a lot of times, like, so for reference, my mom is like a high school English teacher. Shout out, Paige. Uh, she's awesome, right? And a lot of students in her class will be like, "Oh, I love writing, but I'm really drawn to STEM. I'm drawn to this." And so, what you do is such a cool way to put the two together. And I think it's something like, especially me. I come from a very small town where I didn't know any engineers. I didn't know anyone who had worked for NASA or anything. So it's so important to get your story out there as well because it's something I think a lot of people don't think about as an option, like, you have to pick one.
No, no, you're right, and it's so needed. I mean, I was, when I was getting interviewed, they're like, "Well, we just want to let you know that there's no one like you here. You're going to be a
Uh,
right?" And you're just like, "What?" And but that's just an example of what you just described, Grace, of this gap of NASA, all these startups, Axiom, Intuitive Machine, everybody, they need storytellers or story architects. They need people to help them tell their stories, and that, you know, you don't, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, right, to work at these places, right? They need a what we would call a range of brains, right,
right.
to be successful. And I think one of the biggest gaps that are still out there is story and narrative thinking, and getting folks to realize that, as humans, there's neuroscience to back this up. That was the other thing that I leaned into because of our culture, very scientific. They kind of want to see the data, and that we're hardwired for story, and all this neuroscience can back that up, and that's how we learn. That's how we learn new things, and how they stick the best is through a story. So all you all you folks, maybe in Pages, is that Jabal? Yeah, maybe in all you folks, young minds out there, you can be a part of the space ecosystem, with a more of a arts or a educational background. You don't have to be as technical as we think.
Yeah, that's just I love it. It's so important. So also kind of getting back onto stuff you do at NASA, I need to know. Did you just like walk into the room one day and be like, "I'm a story architect, deal with it." Like how did that work? 'Cause that was a new title, right? That
Yeah, yeah.
didn't
That
exist. You just made that.
I did, and you know, um, it just kind of came to me, and I just started using it in my signature line.
Yeah.
You know, I told my team, so I was in a group called the Innovation Foundry, and so our role was to help go from back of the napkin to a mission, right, and just help folks get across that chasm. And so we were working a lot of ideation stuff. And so in these ideation meetings, there was a concept architect, there was a systems architect, and there are all these titles. And so
Yeah.
you pretty much nailed it. Just, one day as we were going around introducing ourselves, I said, "Yeah, I'm Paul. I'm a story architect." And the folks were like, "Oh, what?" But I didn't do that until after I had that street cred that I mentioned.
Yeah, right. You had to like get a little bit of credit built first and you're like, "Okay, here I am."
Now we're gonna throw that out. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we went from an initiative, a strategic initiative, to the ops budget, and then I added chief in front of it.
There you go.
So yeah,
Love
so it
it.
was completely fabricated because I needed a way to connect, and so
Right.
that's what I came up with. Yeah.
That is so cool. I love it. So, is that still technically your title now, or have you kind of shifted areas of NASA? Like, what are you doing at this point in time?
So, actually, I just retired,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
thank you.
That's so
Yeah,
exciting.
but I was still looking for my next, still want to be in there.
Right.
And so yeah, so what I'm trying to do is like some of the things we talked about earlier, trying to work with Caltech, Cal Arts, other institutions to try to help us mold this curriculum that we can really influence the journey of the upcoming scientists, technologists, engineers, mathematician, everybody in the world of science and technology and engineering. So so I don't know. I sometimes feel that um they've lost a little street cred, not because of them, but just because of what the way society's kind of been beating them up a little bit.
Right.
So we need to push back, right? We need to kind of get them armed as best we can. So so I'm looking at that. That's one big chunk, Grace. And then also I've had some other folks reach out to help tell stories. And a couple of them are kind of cool. One is helium-3 on the moon and trying to bring that home, right?
Yeah.
So helium-3 could be a very, very cool element. We don't really have it here on Earth, but it could get us to that the promised land of fusion, right? And energy,
Right.
and have this source, clean source of energy that could hopefully, help us rewild the Earth a little bit and get rid of all these kind of strip mining and all this other stuff because we have this access to things on the moon.
Right.
And then, have you heard of or have you experienced COSM, those theaters?
I've heard, not experienced.
Yeah, they're amazing. So there's one here in LA. I think there's one in Dallas, and they're opening one in Detroit and Atlanta.
Okay.
So, but just a great platform to get folks immersed in the fantastical, universe that we're a part of. It's a great shared experience because it's just like you're in a theater, you're not in a headset, and so we're working with them to help them, on their STEM and STEAM projects. Um, so yeah, a couple things just still around story, kind of trying to take it to the next level and seeing what else I can do with it.
That is very cool. Just kinda getting the word out there, getting people excited about things,
Yeah.
still in the story writing era. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. It feels like I can maybe fly a little bit more, right? And
Yeah. A bit more freedom, kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
yeah, have options.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so I'm just looking forward to this year and the next couple of years and seeing what we can activate out there, right around Storm.
Yeah, and like I already kind of covered, I think what you're doing with the colleges is awesome. I wish I had more people come in and like talk to us because like I think I maybe had one person in industry in my 4 years come and chat with us about what they actually do, like as a mechanical engineer. And that was awesome because it gave you a glimpse into what you can do. And so, kind of like we talked about, being a storyteller is something maybe people don't think about as much. So, it's very cool getting people in there and being like, no, the real world is not this competitive shell that a lot of times colleges can make it feel like. Like feel like you're preparing for war, right? You're like, okay,
Yeah,
let's go
no,
apply for jobs, like it's gonna get real.
yeah. No, it's so true. It's so true. And kind of the three things that we really want to help these young minds do. So it's ideate, collaborate, and communicate. And the ideate part is, again, you're a researcher doing your thing, your single thing usually during that journey, right?
Yeah.
University. And so when you get out to the real world, you really got to figure out how to fully ideate your idea, or your research, right? And then the collaborate part, again, building off of that, you're so narrowly focused that when you get out into the real world, you don't really know how to collaborate with other folks, unfortunately, right? And
Right.
And so they need to learn that it's more of a Jerry Maguire thing, help me help you kind of
Yeah.
kind of think, like we can do this together. And then of course the communicate part, which is the storytelling and the messaging, the messengers. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be really amazing to kind of instill those things as these undergrads work their way through, and then even have another type of level, so to speak, when they become postdocs or grad students,
Right.
to continue to help them maybe build a little community. Maybe there's a little house that they can all kind of hang out, a little
Yeah.
place where they could do podcasts. And so, just trying to see what we can do to just help these young minds flourish, right? And like you said,
Yeah.
get pretty competitive out there. So they need to know how to work together.
Yeah. It's incredible. Very awesome. I don't want to take a ton of your time. I know you're a busy guy, but I do have one more kind of, I don't know, maybe deep question. Put you on the spot. If you had to pick a singular person from your life that maybe helped get you to where you are today, inspired you, like somebody that just stands out as like this person was integral in my journey, who would that be and why?
So again, right about that time, when I was like fifth, sixth grade, so it was a Catholic school, but we had lay teachers, right? So these were regular humans, right? They weren't
Uh,
a nun or a priest teaching a course. And there was Mrs. Butler and Mrs. Skrezevig, and they were just, you know what I mean? They were just like super encouraging. Um, and maybe it was easier to do back then. I'm not sure, the way the education system has evolved, but um, those two were just great in leaning into my creativity and saying, "Hey, this is really cool, do this, do that." And so I think that's what really kind of gave me some early insight, I guess, into maybe what some of my superpowers may be, in this world, and what I was, maybe, my purpose a little bit, and what I was supposed to do. And I know, I've got three boys, and we had started off with twins, and they're gonna be graduating high school this June, right?
oh wow.
But when they were younger, it just seems like it's kind of evolved into more controlling the students as opposed to supporting the students.
Right.
I'm not saying across the board, right? But
Mhm.
just saying there does seem to be a little bit of a change there where, if you're a little too active, we got to get through the lesson. Yeah, anyways, but
Right. Yeah.
not to be a commentary on the education system.
That's another podcast.
That's right. And so, I think, to your question, I think it was just, these adults speaking into my life early on and just encouraging me in some of these skills that all of a sudden grew into this journey that I went on, and that became a big part of it. So
I love that. That is probably the biggest compliment teachers could ever hear, right? Especially at like teaching young kids for them to be like, no, you made an impact early on. That is very cool.
yeah, yeah, no, it goes such a long way. It really, really does.
Oh, well, I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've had an absolute blast talking to you. Your story is incredibly inspiring. We had to have to stay in touch. I want to hear more about what you're doing with all of your writing and the stuff with the colleges.
Yeah.
It's very inspiring.
No, thanks, Grace. Thanks for reaching out. I really enjoyed being here. I enjoy your energy. This was so much fun. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll let you go, and thank you everybody for listening. I appreciate it. Tune in next time, and whatever you do today, make it awesome. We'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Grace in Space podcast, a production of the Space Builders Media Network.